Hi guys, we're back again with another Holocaust lecture. Today we're going to talk about the laws, get a little bit more into it before we start talking about the camps. Make sure you're following along with your guided notes. I have some videos that I want you to watch. You could watch them in between, or you could just watch them and answer the questions at the end to reinforce what we're learning. Okay, the first thing that we're going to talk about is the Nuremberg laws that were created. These were 29 laws passed in 1935. It declared being Jewish as a race. So there's a difference between race, ethnicity, and nationality, okay? There are German people who are Jewish. There are Polish people who are Jewish. There are Russian Jews. There are Spanish Jews, Italian Jews, okay? Being Jewish was their religion. Being German, Russian, Italian, Spanish, that was their ethnicity or even their nationality. But Hitler declared that being Jewish was its own race. The reason why he did that is because he wanted to deny Jews from German citizenship rights. So they're not going to be considered, oh, you can be German and be a Jew. No, you can only be German, that's one race, or Jewish, another race, okay? So denying Jews German citizenship rights. Jews could not serve in government. They could not serve in other professions such as medicine or teaching. So taking away, think about our rights that we have as United States citizens and imagine those rights being stripped away, okay? That's basically what these laws set out and what Hitler wanted to do. This is the first step in his process of cleansing Germany, okay? All right, a little bit more about the Nuremberg laws. Anyone who had 3 or 4 Jewish grandparents were defined as a Jew. And I'm going to show you a chart because the way that they set up these laws can be very, very confusing, okay? So if you had 3 or 4 Jewish grandparents, you were considered a Jew. If you had 1 Jewish grandparent or even 2 Jewish grandparents, you weren't considered a Jew. Now, let's say you have 3 Jewish grandparents, but you don't consider yourself to be Jewish, okay? A lot of people have a different religion than their family, right? Your grandparents might be Catholic, but you go to a Baptist church, okay? The Nuremberg laws stated regardless of whether that individual identified himself or herself as a Jew or belonged to the Jewish religious community. So it didn't matter if you identified as a Jew or not, it had to do about your bloodline. So if you were related to 3 or 4 Jewish grandparents, even if you practiced the Jewish faith or not, then you were still considered a Jew. Okay, so there were a lot of people that said, yeah, my ancestors were Jewish, but I don't practice that. I practice something else. It didn't matter. It had to do with cleansing the bloodlines of the people. That's what Hitler wanted. It also prohibits Jews from marrying or having sexual relations with a person of German or related German blood. So if you were German and you married or had sexual relations with someone who was Jewish, this was considered racial infamy and it was made a criminal offense. So if you married or even just had one sexual relation with a Jewish person, you would be sent to jail or even killed for that. Because think about this. I mean, it's really going really, really far, but Hitler wanted an ethnic cleansing. So if you get married or have sexual relations with someone who is Jewish, then there's a possibility that you could produce an offspring. If you produce an offspring, then that's another Jewish person that you're bringing into this Nazi empire that Hitler doesn't want. So he's trying to, one, kill all the Jews that already exist and make sure that no more Jews are being produced. So if you are a part of that, then it's a criminal offense and you'll go to jail. Prohibition on marriage or sexual relations between people who could produce racially suspect offspring. So a lot of things that people don't realize about the Holocaust is that, yes, it was 99% Jewish people, but it was also all other people that Hitler didn't like or thought weren't good enough to live in his Nazi empire. That could be gypsies, Black people, homosexuals, people who had mental disabilities. So if you were married or had a sexual relation with anybody in that category, anybody that's racially suspect, it was also a criminal offense. Now, I remember when I was teaching this last year to my students, and a lot of their questions were, well, how would someone even find out? if you were German and you were to have sexual relations with a Jewish person and you kept it secret, like how would you get arrested? You have to understand that the government put such a fear on the people that people would rat on each other all the time, okay? If you knew that someone was even hanging out with or talking to someone who was Jewish, your neighbor could go to the police and tell on you, okay? And it happened quite oftenly, not because they just wanted to hurt their neighbor and destroy their lives, but because they were scared that, oh my gosh, my neighbor is talking to a Jewish person. I don't want to get in trouble, so I'm going to go tell the government, okay? Okay, so we have this chart that I was talking about for the Nuremberg laws, and it looks very confusing, and it is very confusing, but let's try to look at it piece by piece. I'm going to grab a purple. So if we look right here at the key, German ancestry are the white circles. So let's focus on that over here. So up top we have the grandparents. So you have 4 German grandparents, okay? You're fine. Even if you marry someone who isn't fully of German blood and you have 4 German grandparents, then you're still considered a citizen. You're good to go, okay? Now there's German ancestry at the 2nd grade and at the 1st grade, or the 2nd degree and the 1st degree, and that means that they're mixed. So German ancestry at the 2nd degree or the 2nd grade means that you have 1 Jewish grandparent. Now that's still okay, and you are still granted German citizenship if you have 1 German or 1 Jewish grandparent. You're just not considered as ethnically pure as people who have 4 German ancestors, okay? You might not have the blonde hair and blue eyes. You're just not looked at as the perfect Aryan race, but you're still granted German citizenship. German ancestry mixed at the 1st degree or the 1st grade, that means that you have 2 Jewish grandparents. Now, that's still okay. You still get granted German citizenship. You don't get sent to the concentration camps. It's fine, and it doesn't matter whether you practice or not. If you have 2 German grandparents and 2 Jewish grandparents, you're still good to go. You're just considered a mixed German of the 1st grade or of the 1st degree, and you're not looked at as highly as the perfect Aryan race that we have over here with 4 German grandparents. Okay, now I'm going to take red and we're going to look at what's considered a Jewish person. So like we said, you have 3 Jewish grandparents or you have 4 Jewish grandparents. You do not get German citizenship if you have 3 or 4 Jewish grandparents. It does not matter if you practice the religion or not. You are now considered part of the Jewish bloodline. You're going to get sent to the ghettos. You're going to get sent to the concentration camps. You are considered a Jew because of your bloodline and because of your heritage, okay? So another question that people were asking when I talked about this last year, how did they come up with, oh, if you have 2 Jewish grandparents, you're fine, but if you have 3, nope, you got to be killed in a camp. Well, there's a conspiracy theory that, oh, Hitler's Jewish. We don't know if that's true or not, okay? Hitler obviously has brown hair. He doesn't have the blonde hair, blue-eyed Aryan look. So it is also weird that he chose that as being the perfect Aryan race. Anyways, the reason why some people think that Hitler might be Jewish is because it was one of his grandparents, I think, were adopted, so they don't really know the lineage of one of his grandparents, so there's a possibility that one of his grandparents might be Jewish. It's not a fact, we don't know, but since we don't know the ancestry of one of his grandparents, because that grandparent was adopted, he could be Jewish, but he kind of saves himself. Well, yeah, I don't know the ancestry of one of my grandparents. And what if they are Jewish? But it's okay. That means they're just mixed to the 2nd degree or the 2nd grade, and that's fine. Okay? So again, this chart is very complicated, but if you break it down, this is how they would analyze if you were Jewish or not. Okay, Jews in Germany. Jewish registry created where all people with Jewish ancestry had to register with the government. So they figure out your bloodline. They realized, okay, if you practice or not, doesn't matter, you're considered Jewish and you have to register with the government as that being your race, and the fact that you don't have citizenship in the country that you live in anymore. You could have been 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, 80 years you live in this country, and now all of a sudden you're not a citizen anymore because the government decides so, okay? Jews had to wear the Star of David. We talked about the Star of David in our last slide. A badge everywhere that they went so that they could be identified. Because again, if you're a German, you don't want to mingle, you don't want to associate yourself with someone who is Jewish, because then you are, it's a criminal offense if you associate yourself with someone who's Jewish. You don't want to be sent to jail, you don't want to die, you don't want your family to be killed for associating with Jewish people. In the beginning they said, oh, well, all Jewish people look alike. You can see how they all look the same. And you saw that in that stereotyping and caricature drawings in the propaganda posters. They say, oh, they look a certain way, I know that they're Jewish. Well, now just to be sure, I know that they're Jewish because they're wearing the Star of David and they have to by the government. Forced to live in isolated ghettos, and I'm going to talk more about that in a second. Remember, it wasn't just concentration camps at first. First, they forced them into these neighborhoods, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. Okay, Kristallnacht. This is a very significant event. I'm going to talk about it for a second, but then I have a video that I want you to watch and questions to answer. You can answer it at the end, or you can pause the video and watch the YouTube video now if you want. So Kristallnacht translates to Night of Broken Glass, and it took place in November of 1938. Jewish stores, houses, and synagogues were destroyed, okay? Synagogues, let me get this color. That's basically like a Jewish church. Okay, so Jewish-owned stores, houses that Jewish people lived in, and their churches were destroyed by regular everyday citizens and by the government, okay? Looted, destroyed. This is a significant event because it marks the beginning of widespread government-led violence against Jews. So let's look at that for a second. Government-led violence. The government is saying these people are rats, they're not even humans, they ruin everything, they need to be extinct. This is how we're going to start. We're going to destroy everything that is theirs, okay? And it's led by the government, which is the crazy thing. Also, just, remember, this is 1938. This isn't that long ago, okay? My grandma was born in 1930. Like, she was 8 years old. I mean, she was living in America, but just to think, you probably had grandparents or maybe great-grandparents that lived during this time. It's crazy to think that something like this could happen that really wasn't that long ago, right? Okay, Hitler, the master manipulator. I just want to clarify something really quickly. So we have Hitler obviously over here, and we have all these young men. These are the Hitler Youth. So the Hitler Youth, they had camps for young children to influence Nazi ideology. Again, it's brainwashing, okay? There's a really great movie, Jojo Rabbit, that just came out in 2019. I put that on my movie recommendation list, and it really shows the Hitler Youth and how they brainwash these young children to think that Jewish people are going to put spells on you, and that's why we have to kill them, and that's why we have to do all these things, and this is why Hitler is the best, okay? Really starting at a young age. And that movie, Jojo Rabbit, has a great representation of the Hitler Youth. And I think there's a documentary about it. I don't know if it's on Netflix or Amazon Prime. Okay, here's a question that we talked about a lot last year. Were all German people bad, horrible, hateful people? Like, German citizens as a whole were just bad people, and that's why they were able to treat the Jews so badly and kill them and hate them, because they were just evil, okay? No, you have to look at scenarios and you have to look at situations that the German people were placed in. Because a lot of people say, well, if I lived in Germany during that time period, I wouldn't have done any of those things, okay? But when you're being brainwashed by the media and manipulated by the government, you can't really say, okay? If you did not conform to the Nazi ideology and you were a pure German citizen, you and your family were killed by the government. And that's the end of that. There were a lot of German people and a lot of Nazis that did not want to kill Jewish people and did not think that what they were doing was right. But if they didn't, then they would die and their family would die, and it would be the government that would come and do it. It's not like they could hide, okay? The secret police would come after them. Yes, there were Germans who truly hated Jews. I'm not saying that all German people were like, oh, I have to do this even though I don't want to. No, there totally were German people who truly hated them and truly were evil, 100%. But you also have to put yourself in that place and time and understand, well, if the government is basically holding a gun to my head and says, if I don't kill this person, I'm going to kill your family, then what do you do in that situation, right? But then on the other hand, there were a lot of Germans that felt that they had no other option, right? Then there were Germans who fought against the government and helped hide Jews. So you really don't know, but those Germans who did help hide Jewish people in their houses, they took a big risk against themselves personally and their family, their children, their cousins, their aunts, their uncles. Anybody that they were associated with could have been killed for the fact that they were trying to help Jews and hide them and save them, okay? So it really is such a manipulative government that made people do things that they really didn't want to do because they were so brainwashed. Not saying that they couldn't have done it. There definitely were a lot of sick people. But you have to look, if I lived in Germany at the time, I would have gone against the government. I would have done this. You never really know. Okay, so let's talk about the ghettos, the Jewish ghettos. So a ghetto is just another word for like a neighborhood, okay? So beginning with the invasion of Poland during World War II, the regime of Nazi Germany set up ghettos across Europe in order to segregate and confine Jews. So the government set up these neighborhoods. Think of like government housing, okay? They set up these neighborhoods that they said all the Jewish people, we're going to gather up all the Jewish people in Germany and in Poland, and we're going to take them from their houses and we're going to force them to live in this neighborhood that the government created for them, okay? This is the very first step of the Holocaust. Nazi soldiers forced Jews out of their house, threw away all of their belongings, and forced them to live and work in the ghettos. So basically what would happen, imagine you're just sitting in your house having dinner with your family. Nazi soldiers who work for the government, okay, this isn't a gang, these are people who work for the government, come into your house, force you out of your house, say, leave all your stuff, you're not allowed to take anything, you could take a bag with a change of clothes in it, but your computer, your books, your whatever it is, you have to leave it in your house. You're never going to see this place again. They force you out of your house and they bring you into this small apartment complex where all other Jewish people live. You're forced to live there. You're forced to work there. And there's fences and wires and walls, brick walls surrounding the neighborhood or the ghetto that you're forcing you to live in, and you can't get out. Okay? But as of right now, these Jewish ghettos are housing. They're nowhere near how bad the concentration camps were, and that is really the next phase. But being forced out of your house to live in this government housing with none of your belongings, forced to work, and basically these Nazi soldiers, they could come in your house at any time and kill you. They could say, all right, everybody out of your apartment, out on the street, I'm going to line you up, I'm going to shoot random people. And that's what life was like in the ghettos, okay? It was really the first step before concentration camps, which we'll talk about next. Okay, the Warsaw Ghetto, this was in one of the ghettos in Poland, and one of the most famous ghettos because they had an uprising. I have two videos that I would like you to watch. One is a survivor story of a woman who lived in the Warsaw Ghetto. Just watch the video and answer the questions. She really describes what it was like to live there. The next video that I would like you to watch, you don't have to watch. I'm going to warn that it is violent and maybe disturbing, but it's from a movie called The Pianist. I I put it in my movie recommendation list. I think you should just watch the whole movie. It's one of the best Holocaust movies of all time. This movie really showcases what it was like in the ghettos. This movie does not show the concentration camps, the death camps. It shows what it was like in the Warsaw Ghetto for a specific man. He was a famous piano player in Poland, hence why it's called The Pianist, and it's his journey and his life, but it really, truly accurately depicts what the ghettos were like. Okay. Again, you don't have to watch the movie clip. It just shows clips of the ghetto. I would recommend watching the whole movie, but it can be a little disturbing, so you don't have to watch it if you don't want to. Okay, so the next step is the final solution. This was a plan developed in 1942 to eliminate all Jews from Europe. The Nazis realized that the ghettos were overpopulated and too difficult to take care of. So at first they said, all right, we don't want the Jews to be in society with our German citizens, so we're going to put them in these individual neighborhoods by the government, okay? They can't go out. We provide soup lines for them. They work. They live in these little tiny houses. That's it. The ghettos were becoming overpopulated. Too many people were dying. It was too difficult to feed them. What do we do next? These ghettos, these small neighborhoods where we're trying to confine the Jewish people, it's not really working out. That's when the next step, sending Jewish people to the concentration camps from all across Europe. Okay, and I'm gonna have a whole lecture about concentration camps in my next slide, okay? But that is the final solution, where at first it was just put the Jews in ghettos to get them out of everyday society and live in their own little neighborhoods where they can work and we barely have to feed them and we can kill them for fun if we want to. Not really working out, let's just send them to concentration camps, okay? In the camps, they were used for hard labor or they were just killed, which is eventually the extermination process. The extermination process wasn't the original idea. Steps just led to that, okay? The last thing that I want to talk about are Gestapos, the official secret police of Nazi Germany and Nazi-occupied Europe. They ruthlessly eliminate opposition to Nazis within Germany and its occupied territories. They were responsible for the roundup of Jews throughout Europe. Basically, it was the Nazi police, okay? They were called Gestapos. They would go throughout neighborhoods, try to find Jews in basements, hiding in walls, hiding in attics, where they would just go in your house. You would be a German citizen, and they would just search your house because they heard a rumor that you were hiding Jews. And if they found the Jews, then they would send them to the concentration camps. If they found the Jews in your house and you were German, you were 90% of the time killed or sent to prison. Roundup of Jews and the deportation to extermination or concentration camps, and we're going to talk about that in our next lecture. If there was a rumor that you were hiding Jews in your house, the Gestapos would come and search, exactly what I said. And a lot of Holocaust movies, especially the one that I mentioned earlier, Jojo Rabbit, about the Hitler Youth, they showed the Gestapos. Really, they were just roaming the street to make sure that, one, all German citizens were following the Nuremberg laws and that they were following everything that Hitler set out, and then two, making sure that all Jewish people were cleared of the streets and cleared of society in Jewish life and sent to, at first, the ghettos and then later the concentration camps. All right, that's everything I have for you guys today. My next slide, we are going to talk about the concentration camps.